When we observe the events unfolding in the world today, we must not be deceived by the noise and distractions of the media. The headlines may speak of isolation, of sanctions, of economic pressure, but those who are grounded in divine truth see beyond the surface. What is happening in Iran today is not a tale of desperation, it is a sign of resilience, of strategic clarity, and of divine alignment. When a nation, surrounded on all sides by economic warfare, cyber sabotage, and diplomatic hostility, still rises with confidence and strength, that is not weakness. That is victory in its earliest form. The recent move by Iran to purchase advanced fighter jets from China is not a simple defense contract. It is a declaration. It tells the world that Iran is not alone. It tells the arrogant powers who boast of their sanctions and threats that their grip is slipping. For years, they have tried to isolate Iran, economically, politically, diplomatically. They believed that by surrounding the nation, they could choke its voice. But they have failed to understand the deeper current that moves this nation. Iran is not powered by temporary alliances, it is sustained by a divine mission. And when a people stand with that clarity of purpose, they will never truly be isolated. China's decision to sell advanced fighter jets to Iran is not just a business transaction. It is a shift in the global order. It is proof that the unipolar world dominated by the West is crumbling. The East is rising, and the oppressed are finding one another. And in this new alignment, the arrogance of empires will no longer go unchallenged. This is why the West fears these developments, not because of the number of jets, but because of what they represent, a coalition of nations who no longer bow to the same thrones of power. A world in which resistance is no longer alone. A world where justice can be defended with strength. The arrogance of the global powers has always been rooted in the illusion of control. They believed they could write the rules and the rest of the world would obey. But today, we see that illusion shattering. Iran stands firm, not as a follower of global injustice, but as a pioneer of independence. And now, with strategic military partnerships growing, especially with powers like China and Russia, we are witnessing the birth of a new axis, an axis that values sovereignty, dignity, and resistance to global oppression. This is no longer a dream. It is reality taking form before our eyes. Those who read history with open hearts know that empires always fall when they become blind to the suffering they cause. The West believed it could dominate forever by dividing and conquering, by waging wars in the name of peace, by installing puppets and toppling nations. But today, the resistance that began in blood and sacrifice has matured. It now moves with diplomacy, with strategy, with alliances that break the mold of past submission. And at the center of this shift stands Iran, not as a military superpower, but as a moral force that has refused to surrender its principles. This is why every move by Iran today carries weight. It is not about military strength alone. It is about the message behind it. When Iran strengthens its air force, when it reopens nuclear facilities like Fordow, when it deepens ties with nations who reject Western hegemony, it is declaring to the world that sovereignty will not be bought or silenced. And that message inspires not only Muslims, but oppressed people everywhere, from Latin America to Africa, from Southeast Asia to Eastern Europe. The truth is, we are witnessing the unraveling of a false world order. The same order that for decades claimed to bring democracy while destroying nations. The same order that preaches human rights while funding occupation and apartheid. That order is losing credibility, and more importantly, it is losing power. And those who once stood alone, resisting under siege, under bombs, under embargoes, are now finding strength in one another. That is what Iran's recent moves signify. That is what the fighter jets from China represent. Not war, but independence. Not escalation, but liberation from a world system that has oppressed the weak and rewarded the unjust. To the believers, this is not just geopolitical change, it is divine preparation. It is the shifting of the balance of the world in anticipation of something far greater. It is a sign that the time is drawing closer for the truth to emerge openly, without fear, and to challenge the thrones of falsehood. Every new alliance, every rejection of Western pressure, every bold step towards sovereignty is a trumpet call, echoing that the old world is dying, and the new one, promised in our traditions, is being born. So let the world speak of isolation. Let them write their articles and issue their sanctions. We know what we see. We see a nation standing firm while others crumble under pressure. We see a nation preparing not for conquest, but for justice. And that is why this story is far from over. In truth, it is only just beginning. There are moments in history when a single decision, made in silence and solitude, echoes across the world like thunder. One such decision has just been made: the Islamic Republic has reopened the Fordow nuclear facility. And while some try to dismiss this as a technical move or a political reaction, we know that it is far more than that. This is a message, a declaration, and a prophecy unfolding. Fordow is not just a site of enriched uranium, it is a symbol of unwavering sovereignty. A sign that this nation does not bow, it does not retreat, and it does not wait for permission from those who have drowned the world in injustice. They told us to submit. They pressured, they negotiated, they threatened, they sanctioned. They came to the table with smiles but returned to their offices to plot. They spoke of peace while building warships around our shores. And yet, despite all of it, the Islamic Republic stood firm. Why? Because our vision is not limited to their approval. Our path is not paved by the hands of imperialists. It is shaped by divine instruction. We do not act out of fear, we act from principle. We do not move based on their threats, we move based on truth. The reopening of Fordow is not an act of provocation. It is a revival of dignity. It is the announcement that no agreement, no deal, no foreign signature can determine our destiny. Only Allah determines that. This facility, carved deep within the mountains, is like the heart of this nation, resilient, protected, and beating with defiance. For years, they tried to shut it down. They told us that peace required obedience, that development required surrender. But now they see. Peace without dignity is slavery. Development without independence is illusion. Let us be clear, we are not pursuing weapons of destruction. We do not seek power to dominate. We seek knowledge, advancement, and self-reliance. But we also know that the world we live in does not respect weakness. It does not honor morality unless it is backed by strength. And so we strengthen ourselves, not to harm others, but to ensure that we are never harmed, that we are never reduced to beggars at the table of tyrants. Fordow represents that strength, silent, steady, unyielding. This is why they fear it. Not because it is dangerous, but because it is independent. Because it tells a story they cannot control. A story of a nation that refused to collapse. A people who endured war, sanctions, betrayal, and isolation, and emerged not weaker, but more determined. They fear Fordow because it reminds them that their tools of domination are no longer effective. That the age of obedient puppets and installed regimes is over. And for us, this decision is not just strategic, it is spiritual. It is a reflection of the Quranic principle: do not weaken and do not grieve, for you will be superior if you are true believers. It is the manifestation of the promise that those who rely on Allah, who remain patient and steadfast, will be elevated above those who boast in arrogance. Fordow's reopening is not merely the flip of a switch, it is a sign that this Ummah has not forgotten who it is. That we have not forgotten our mission. Our mission is to stand as a voice for the oppressed. To confront tyranny wherever it exists. To prepare the world for the arrival of divine justice. And justice does not come through silence. It comes through resistance. Through endurance. Through courage in the face of global hypocrisy. Fordow is now more than a facility, it is a flag planted in the soil of destiny. A signal that the march toward the promised future is not slowing down, it is accelerating. They may gather in their chambers and issue statements of concern. They may manipulate their media and stir public fear. But none of this will change what is happening. The movement of truth has begun. The world is witnessing a shift. And those who still cling to the illusion of Western dominance must now confront a reality they cannot reverse. A reality where the Islamic Republic is not only standing, it is leading. This decision is also a call to the Ummah. Wake up. See the signs. Understand the message. Iran's stance is not just for itself, it is for every Muslim nation, every free soul who dares to challenge the tyrant. It is a reminder that we are not powerless. That we do not need to wait for permission to reclaim our honor, our dignity, and our rightful place in the story of humanity. So let them fear Fordow. Let them worry. Because it means one thing clearly. The time of submission is over. The age of standing tall has begun. The reaction of the West to Iran's defiance is not just about politics, it is rooted in fear. But not the kind of fear they openly admit. Their fear is deeper, older, and more spiritual than they are willing to acknowledge. It is a fear of awakening. A fear of truth clothed in strength. A fear of prophecy being fulfilled before their very eyes, and yet still out of their control. When they see Iran advancing, militarily, spiritually, and ideologically, they are not just watching the growth of a regional power. They are witnessing the shaking of an empire that has ruled the world with lies for centuries. Why do they panic when Iran strengthens its defenses? Why do they tremble when the Islamic Republic announces progress in technology or diplomacy with non-Western nations? Why do they obsess over every word from the leadership of this nation? It is because Iran does not speak from the language of submission. It does not operate on their terms. It is not a pawn on their chessboard. And more than anything, Iran is tied to a worldview that threatens to unravel the very foundations of Western supremacy, a worldview rooted in divine justice, in martyrdom, in resistance, and in the awaited promise of a savior who will bring truth to the earth and expose the global deceivers. This fear is not new. It has always existed in the hearts of those who seek to dominate. Pharaoh feared Moses, not because of his army, but because of his truth. Nimrod feared Abraham, not because of his wealth, but because of his conviction. Caesar feared Jesus, not for any political campaign, but because of his righteousness. And in our time, they fear a nation that, despite being encircled, still raises its voice, still raises its fists, and still refuses to forget the mission that Allah has placed upon it. The West is terrified of the culture that fuels Iran. A culture where martyrdom is honored, where sacrifice is cherished, and where resistance is a form of worship. This is alien to them. Their societies are built on fear of death, on comfort, on compromise, on silence. But the soul of Iran, molded by decades of struggle and shaped by the blood of martyrs, does not fear death, it fears dishonor. And that is why they cannot understand us. That is why they cannot predict us. That is why they cannot defeat us. They call us extremists because we do not accept humiliation. They call us radicals because we do not forget the oppressed. They label us dangerous because we speak the truth without fear of consequence. But behind their labels is fear. Fear that their lies will no longer hold. Fear that their puppets in the region will fall one by one. Fear that their influence over Muslim hearts is fading. And fear that the world is waking up to the hypocrisy that they have built their empire upon. They built their power on controlling minds. On rewriting history, on distorting faiths, on painting the oppressor as the victim and the victim as the threat. But now, their narrative is cracking. With every atrocity committed by their allies, with every lie exposed by independent voices, with every act of resistance that emerges from the rubble, they are losing control of the story. And in that story, Iran stands at the center, not as a superpower in the traditional sense, but as a beacon of what it means to resist without losing your soul. The rise of Iran terrifies them because it signals a return of the spiritual into politics. It reminds the world that leadership is not about dominance, it's about submission to the divine. It proves that a nation can be poor in wealth and still rich in principle. It shows that a people can be attacked, sanctioned, and demonized, and still emerge stronger, wiser, more united. This is a revival not just of power, but of purpose. And that is what they fear the most. But their fear is not enough to stop what is coming. Because no matter how much they try to delay it, to distort it, to demonize it, the truth cannot be defeated by weapons, nor silenced by lies. The rise of Iran is a sign, not of destruction, but of what is to come. A divine current is moving through this world, tearing down the idols of greed, arrogance, and colonialism. And in its place, a new order is being prepared, one built on truth, on sacrifice, on justice. So let them fear. Let them tremble. Because their fear only confirms what we already know, that the world is changing. That the era of domination is ending. That the promised time is near. The pages of history are not dead. They are living mirrors, reflecting the struggles of the past into the battles of the present. What we are witnessing today is not new, it is the repetition of an ancient pattern, the same divine story unfolding again and again. The Islamic Republic's resistance, its steadfastness under immense pressure, is not accidental. It mirrors the eternal struggle between truth and tyranny, between the pure and the corrupt, between the faithful and the arrogant. And in this repetition lies a sign, a prophetic rhythm that echoes through time, preparing us for the final chapter of this divine conflict. From the very beginning, the line was drawn. When Prophet Ibrahim stood alone against the empire of Nimrod, it was not a clash of armies, it was a confrontation of worldviews. One built on submission to the one God, the other built on the illusion of human supremacy. When Moses faced Pharaoh, it was not just a challenge to a king, it was a declaration that truth cannot be enslaved by power. When Jesus stood before the Roman Empire, when Muhammad, peace be upon them, was cast out by the Quraysh, the same story was being written, that those who stand for the truth will be attacked, but they will never be defeated. And today, Iran walks that same path. This nation, like the prophets before it, has been demonized by the powers of the world. They have tried to isolate it, to humiliate it, to break its will. But what they do not understand is that this resistance is not powered by weapons or wealth, it is fueled by faith. It is not sustained by alliances, it is sustained by purpose. When a nation decides to submit to God and not to tyrants, it becomes unstoppable. That is why, despite decades of siege, war, and propaganda, the voice of Iran is louder today than ever before. The Western powers fear Iran not because of missiles, but because of meaning. Because in every defiant speech, in every scientific breakthrough, in every martyr buried with honor, they hear the voice of the prophets echoing through history. They hear Ibrahim saying, "I turn my face toward him who created the heavens and the earth." They hear Moses shouting, "Let my people go." They hear Hussein standing on the plains of Karbala, facing a vast army and saying, "I see nothing but beauty in martyrdom." Iran carries that legacy. It embodies that message. And what about the oppressors? They too follow a pattern. Like Pharaoh, they claim to be saviors while they slaughter the innocent. Like the Roman emperors, they hide their cruelty behind titles of peace and order. They speak of democracy and rights while they arm tyrants and occupy lands. They mock faith while worshipping their own power. But the pattern of history is clear, those who defy God's justice always fall. Always. Their empires crumble. Their names become curses. And the people they oppressed rise to become the inheritors of the future. Iran's endurance, then, is not just political, it is prophetic. It is a living testimony that the story is not over. That the divine hand is still at work in the world. And as we see this same pattern of truth versus tyranny playing out today, we must understand that we are closer than ever to the promised conclusion. The rise of global arrogance, the alliances of falsehood, the oppression of the innocent, the betrayal of religious values by those who claim to uphold them, these are not random events. They are signs. And Iran's role in this unfolding narrative is to be the voice that never bends, the standard that never falls. This is why the Islamic Republic must remain vigilant, pure in intention, and unwavering in principle. Because it does not stand only for itself, it stands on behalf of the oppressed everywhere. Like the prophets who walked before, Iran must endure being misunderstood, mocked, and attacked, because that is the price of truth. That is the road walked by every righteous nation in history. We must take this responsibility seriously. Every one of us has a role in this sacred struggle. This is not about military might alone. It is about moral clarity. It is about patience in suffering and perseverance in faith. We must teach our children not just to be proud of this legacy, but to be prepared to carry it forward. Because this is not the final story, it is the preparation for it. The promised Savior, the awaited Mahdi, will emerge in a world shaped by this very conflict. And the righteous must be ready to stand with him, to support him, and to recognize him by his truth, not his appearance. So let the arrogant celebrate their short-lived victories. Let them boast of their wealth, their armies, their influence. It has all happened before. And it all ended the same way. But as for us, we will continue to walk the path of Moses, of Ibrahim, of Muhammad and Hussein. We will carry the banner of resistance until the earth is filled with justice as it was once filled with oppression. This is not just a time for analysis. It is not merely an age for observation. It is a time for preparation. A moment when the Ummah must rise from slumber and recognize that the pages of destiny are turning faster than ever. What we are witnessing, whether it be Iran's military advancement, the reopening of nuclear facilities, or the collapse of the West's illusion of superiority, is not a collection of isolated events. They are signs. They are calls from the unseen realm, urging every believer to ask, where do I stand? What role will I play in what is coming? We are not standing on the edge of a normal future. We are approaching a decisive chapter in human history. The world order as we know it is cracking. The alliances of arrogance are weakening. The grip of the oppressors is slipping.